Lights, camera, action.
Good morning everyone, I am Angelo Somson, and today I will be talking about the characteristics and principles of educational planning. When we say characteristics of educational planning, these are the attributes of how we can obtain improvements and achieve developments in our educational sector, and it helps in identifying goals and objectives. The number one characteristics of educational planning is it should be dynamic. Educational planning should be dynamic in order to pace with changes in our society. Just like now, before the start of lockdown, no one is prepared of how would education will be implemented given the fact that we are all far from each other. And in the beginning, we are just only using social media platform like Messenger to submit our activities. But now our institution collaborated with MS Teams and somehow it lightened the situation of us students. It should be comprehensive. Planning should take the overall view of the entire educational system. Just like here in our country, we adopted the K-12 and the agencies who is responsible to make it meaningfully happen, they establish educational classrooms and teaching resources. In short, it caters all the aspect when we do planning for education. Third is educational should be integrated. This implies that educational planning should aim at maximizing output through the use of limited resources. It shouldn't require a visually high technology resources or technology to integrate education. Fourth is educational planning should be interactive. Planning should require redefining educational goals and objectives because of serendipity and unforeseen obstacles. We should always come up into something that our learners will be able to explore new things or we introduce new for them to be actively participate. Fifth is planning should provide for exploration of alternatives. This would enhance choice of possible alternatives in terms of methods, strategies, and approaches for effectiveness and efficiency. Just like they say, no one size fits all. Educational planning should be goal-oriented. Planning should be based on clearly defined goals that are simple and easy to understand. 7. Educational planning should be future-oriented. It should focus on the improvement of future educational development. 8. Educational planning should be pragmatic. This means that the plan should be good and effective. It can be evaluated by how good the plan is and how well it is implemented. When we say pragmatic, it should be teaching our students that things that are practical for life and encourages them to grow into better people. In other words, the primary objective must be the welfare or goodness of our students. 9. Planning of education should be a continuous process that takes into consideration current changes in our society. Learning is a never-ending process, so was planning of education. We should always seek for improvement and be adaptive with the changes in our society. And lastly, educational planning is a deliberate action and it does not happen by accident. Principles of educational planning. Educational planning is of extreme importance as it forms the basis of all projects related to the development of education. For example, the qualitative and the quantitative improvement in our education. The number one principle of educational planning is proper formulation. Educational planning needs to have a perfect formulation. Why? Because the procedure and processes should be carefully formulated, unified, and systematically carried out. The objective must be clear. Coordination and integration needs to be developed among various components, activities, group of people involved in the planning. And all the activities of planning should be carefully carried out methodically. The second principle is element of national planning. Educational planning should be recognized and carried out as an integral element of aspect of national planning. It is widely known that social and national development can be achieved through a well-developed system of education. The activities and programs of education must take into account the overall national development. Educational planning has to be accepted as a primary and essential part of total national planning. Therefore, objectives, activities, programs, procedure of educational planning should be determined in a larger context of national planning. Third principle is ongoing and unremitting process. Educational planning has to be a continuous process requiring constant modification and adaptation of plans to meet the regular and emergency needs. There can be no plan which can be considered final, rigid, and perfect. The plans may need changes anytime in future depending upon new situations, conditions, and circumstances, and other exigencies. The plan, when prepared, should have inbuilt flexibility and adaptability to meet emergency needs. Fourth principle is functional, pragmatic, and practical. The plans developed should be workable and must be such as it can be implemented. The plans should be realistic and feasible. It should conform to the situational realities and at the same time adaptable to future requirements. The plan should aim to achieve the objectives in the circumstances and conditions which are obtained. Fifth principle is based on research. Any kind of planning works best if it is based on sound research. In educational planning should be based on systematic research, and decisions that involved in the plan should not arbitrary or institutional. The final choice of the alternatives should be warranted by factual information and results of objective research. The sixth principles of educational planning is active, continuing participation of interest groups and organizations. Implementation of plans at different stages would command involvement of many people and several groups in any kind of organization. Involvement of these people may contribute significantly to more functional and practical decision making. If the people are involved in planning, they are expected to have a greater sense of identification with the plan, and at the same time, they would be better motivated to implement the decision contained in a plan. A cautionary note here is that the participation of interested groups and persons should not be limited on early stages but should be continuous at all stages. Seventh principle, result in specific recommendations which are understood and accepted by participants. The plan should not offer guidelines but a specific and descriptive recommendation of what it is to be done, why is it to be done, how is it to be done. They should be self-explanatory so that people who are involved in its implementation may understand what are required to do. They should be comprehensive enough to be understood and implemented. Continuing evaluation of the planning process. The plans should not be considered as things which are fixed. They should be ready for evaluation. Frequent assessment of different components enables future adaptation of the plan according to changing conditions. Ninth principle. Meeting the needs of the people. Educational planning is done with the intention of meeting the needs of the country or people. Hence, the social, manpower, and economic needs of the nation, among others, have to be the center of all considerations. Lastly, needs-based and situational-oriented. There cannot be a single best plan for all purposes and all times. Each plan would have a unique character which would be determined by the needs of the situations. A specific and unitary plan can be prepared to solve immediate problems. Similarly, short-term and long-term plans may be prepared. Alright, and that ends my discussion. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've learned and enjoyed our today's session. Again, I am Angelo Samson. I'll see you next time. Bye!